Hello, BookTube. Who's up for some more random Hedgehog book recommendations? The title of this little feature on this channel has now become a bit of uh, an antiquary. It refers to Christopher Russell, who had a BookTube channel that was embraced by everybody, liked by everybody. He was dubbed our little corner of BookTube's cartoon hedgehog by Joe Spivey. But Christopher Russell was made a video in which he pointed out that several of the easily demonstrable falsehoods that were spoken in another video were easily demonstrable falsehoods. He simply pointed out, well, that's not true. And that's not true either. And for that, he was attacked enormously in the comments of that video that caused him to leave BookTube. Now, I'm working on him to return, but you never know. And in the meantime, he once did a video of just random books that he talked about. And I don't need much prodding to talk about random books with you, so I adopted that as Hedgehog book recommendations. And they are just continuing, even though the Hedgehog is missing, because you all like them so much. I swear. I've heard from so many people in the last 2 months saying, could you just make 10 videos a day where you just talk about random books? Just talk about every book that's ever existed, whether you like it or not. It doesn't have to be a recommendation. Because, as I've mentioned many times before, there's something wrong with all of you. Anyway, we're going to go through some Hedgehog book recommendations here. I'm going to start with a well-known book. There'll be some well-known books here. This is Sinclair Lewis. This is Main Street. This was his breakout book. It wasn't his first novel, but it was his first breakout success. First thing that made him independently wealthy, first of all. It was before he got showered with every award, including the Nobel Prize in Literature. And it's the story of small town America. The little town here is within sight of the skyline of Minneapolis. This is an upper Midwest novel in which a character comes to a small town hoping to find the good in it and also elevate it. Give it some of the finer things, add to its airs and graces. And that mission fails completely. But in the process, we get a scouring examination of small town Midwest and upper Midwest life. Scouring. And I know that much has been said about Main Street and Dodsworth and Babbitt. I know that much has been said about how small town upper Midwest life really hasn't changed in 100 years, but it hasn't changed since these novels. I don't know that that's exactly true. But Sinclair Lewis pays rereading. He really does. I have ebooks of all of his books, of course. They're all on Project Gutenberg, but there's an anthology of him that I don't have, that I want. I don't have any in-print paper copies of Sinclair Lewis. And that's because there's a fat anthology of, I believe it has Main Street, Babbitt, and Dodsworth. And I want that. I know exactly what it looks like. It's from ages and ages ago, 50 years ago, so I will find it eventually. But Main Street is actually good. I know that a lot of you are probably a little bit biased against it because probably it was assigned in schools. And anything you get assigned in schools, assigned literature in schools. You all know where I stand on the subject. The surest way to to suck the life out of a reader, to make them a non-reader. Surest way to do it. Anyway, let's move on to science fiction. This is The Sheep Lookup by John Brunner, who I am making something of an informal study of in 2025. It's odd the way I do those things, what I call a systematic reread. It's odd the way I do them. Often I back into them accidentally. Often it's simple propinquity. It's just the serendipity of what I find on bookstore shelves. I think I'm doing that with John Brunner. Not really sure. The Sheep Lookup is a kind of sort of thematic follow-through to Stand on Zanzibar. It can be read on its own. It is a very much a dystopian prediction future novel in which he envisions a world in which rapacious corporations run the world and petty corrupt governments only act like they do, but they take their marching orders from those corporations. And those corporations, of course, have convinced all of those governments to withdraw or invalidate any environmental protections. So the air isn't fit to breathe, water isn't fit to drink. The world is being strangled so that these corporations can eke out one last dollar for their shareholders. In other words, The Sheep Lookup takes place in 2025. It's John Brunner at his best. John Brunner wrote 4 great novels. and the Sheep Lookup is one of them. It's often not accorded the status I think that it deserves, because a lot of times people view it as a sequel, as if a sequel can't be great. But it isn't a sequel. It stands well on its own, and it is really, really good. It's really, really good. John Brunner did plenty of time in the trenches. He did plenty of time hunched over a mechanical typewriter, just pounding out whatever he knew would sell a penny a word to whatever editor was buying. But unlike a lot of writers who did that, he also had much bigger, much better books inside him. They just required the 1960s. They required a market, an actual market, as they did for everybody. As they did for everybody. You can't write a masterpiece if there's no market for it. And finally, those two things, the commercial and the artistic, converged in the late 50s and then in the 60s. And Brunner was able to write his masterpieces. So I strongly recommend this. I wish I could find it in this old Del Rey mass market. I would love to find it in that old Del Rey mass market. It's probably $40 in the used book market. Then we have something by Ted Levin called America's Snake. This is about the timber rattler, the rattlesnake. It's about one particular population of rattlesnakes, not where you would expect to find them. But it's also about rattlesnakes in general. The opening it has a bravura opening where we get a minute by minute, second by second dissection of what it feels like to if you're a small rodent and you are poisoned by a rattlesnake. But it's also a hymn of praise to rattlesnakes, to the beauty of them, to the excellent design of them. Ted Levin points out, as many other people do, that rattlesnakes do not want to bite you. That when they make their famous rattling noise, they are warning you to get away from them. They are not warning they're about to strike. They're asking you to leave them alone. He points out a couple of times in this book what other nature writers have pointed out over the last 200 years, which is that if you're going to be bitten by a rattlesnake of any kind, even the really big ones, you're far more likely to be bitten without a rattle. The rattle is usually when they don't want to engage. When they're going to bite you, you step on them, they're going to bite you without rattling. That is true. I can speak from experience on this. Rattlesnakes have a habit in common with pit vipers of any kind, which is not true with other kinds of poisonous snakes, in that once they've bitten you, they sort of look back, like they've got a smug look on their face, like they know what they've done. Either that, or in their tiny little pea brains, maybe that look on their face is just simple epistemic confusion, because they have delivered a full load of venom to something they cannot possibly eat. So they're a little confused. I don't know what it is. Needless to say, I come to this subject from a place of absolutely immovable personal prejudice. I've been bitten by so many of these things in so many different environments, although not in the main environment of this book, that I can't look on them as nature's miracles, as he calls them many times. But it's still a beautiful book. It's still an amazing work of natural history. I've never seen a paperback. I don't know if I'm blurbed on the paperback. I would imagine that if I am, my review of this book was very favorable, but it was also, let's just say, saturated with my own personal experience of these things. So if there's a blurb from me on this book, I'm sure that you could tell that the writer of that blurb has met these things, been bitten by these things, and doesn't like them, and is just praising the book anyway. I'm sure that you could tell about that, but I've never seen it. I've never seen even the hardcover out in the wild. Then we have something edited by Michael Cox with help from R.A. Gilbert. This is the Oxford Book of English Ghost Stories, and it is wonderful. There's a number, in the 20th century saw a number of really, really good ghost story anthologies, and this is one of the best of them. There's something about the English ghost story that is particularly atmospheric. Old ivy-clambered houses, tiny country lanes. It works really well. These are really, really well chosen. If you're interested in ghost story anthologies, then we have something by Robert Finch. The late great Robert Finch was a Cape Cod essayist, Cape Cod writer, Cape Cod nature writer. Did a really, really good job. Probably one of the foremost ones. And this is his book, Death of a Hornet. And other essays. I don't want to block the bean's face. Death of a Hornet and Other Essays, which the title says they're Cape Cod essays, and they are. For those of you who don't know your American geography, Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the greatest state in the Union, is a rectangle extending out into, I think, past the wall into the Winterlands. There are dragons and monsters past I-95. I don't know. I don't know that anyone lives out there. But in addition to that rectangle, there's also a hook extending out into the Atlantic Ocean. And that hook is Cape Cod, which is a biome of its own. It won't last. Rising seas will claim it immediately. But it's beautiful. It's an amazing, spellbinding place. And I know it really, really well. I have spent a lot of time on Cape Cod. And thanks to David Murphy, I've actually returned there with Frida when I thought I would never go there again. So that was wonderful. And these essays are about Cape Cod, but they are lovely even if you've never been there. I can recommend them in that sense. And then we have Brian Deming's book. This is Boston and the Dawn of American Independence. An excellent history of Boston's role in creating American independence. An excellent history of that. I believe that cover is one engraving of the so-called Boston Massacre. The Boston Massacre, of course, has a pride of place in this book, as does Samuel Adams, who spent a lot of time trying to convince ordinary people in Boston that this unbelievable, catastrophic step, actually breaking away from the greatest empire the world has ever known, was the only way forward. No more capitulation to these taxes and duties. No more suing for clemency or asking for a different governor or writing plaintive letters to the king. No. We've spawned a new nation here. We require a new nationality. We've spawned a new nationality. We require a new nation. It was Samuel Adams who did that. He had help. James Otis was crazy. There were a couple of other people who were just leg breakers. Samuel Adams was the one you would listen to when he made that case to you. And as Samuel Adams was for Boston, so Boston was for the other colonies. Getting in your ear, telling you this has got to happen. And this book does it wonderfully. Just does it wonderfully. Then we have something by Gregory Nagy. I've never seen this out in the wild. I wish I'd kept my copy. This is the ancient Greek hero in 24 hours. And don't let the dumb in 24 hours gimmick title fool you. This is a really good study of what the ancient Greeks considered to be crucial elements in their heroes, which are in some ways radically different from what we look for in our own heroes. A really fascinating, witty study. I loved it. I cut my teeth on Greek mythology. I have absolutely grown up on all of my initial love of reading is because of Homer. It's because of Greek mythology. I don't know why I didn't keep this book. I was captivated on every page. But if I ever see it again out in the wild, I will. And this next one, this is by a whole bunch of people. Yeah, Michael Fogden, Marianne Taylor, and Sherry Williamson. And I wish I'd kept this too. This is a book, Hummingbirds, a life guide size to every species. And it's a bird book where the hummingbirds are shown at their correct size. Because hummingbirds they're amazing. Their biology is amazingly examined in this book. The more you learn about hummingbirds, the more fascinating they are. And the most fascinating thing about them, of course, the thing we know about them, is that they are birds who have evolved to fill the same niche as insects, which requires them to be constantly flying and very small. I know many people. I've visited many people in their beach houses or their country houses where they didn't know that they had hummingbirds until I told them. We're sitting there out on the patio having breakfast, and they're talking about, the bees and the wasps that are all over the plants now that it's high spring. And I point out to them, well, some of those bees and wasps are birds. You do know that, right? Take a careful look at them. Those are birds that are at your plants. It's just incredible. The natural history and the evolution of hummingbirds is done in this book, but this is also a species by species thing. And the gimmick, the signature gimmick of the book, is that hummingbirds are so small that you can actually show them at life size here. They're very difficult birds to bird as a verb. Very difficult to know what you're looking at because they're blurs of motion, but it is possible to do. Then we have something by Charles Marsh. This is a biography of Dietrich Bonhoeffer called Strange Glory. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a preacher and a religious man and also an ardent active enemy of Nazism, and he paid for it with his life. And this is a terrific biography of him, novelistic and empathetic, as well as being steeped in fact. It's the best biography of Bonhoeffer that I've ever read in English. And again, I have never encountered this. I don't know why I gave it up. This is the thing about getting new books in the mail. Those of you who might not know, might be new to my channel, I'm a book critic, so I get new books in the mail. And I can't keep them all. Or I'd be up to my eyeballs in them. I wouldn't be able to move around here. I'm not a hoarder, despite what you might think. I'm not a hoarder. Come to Hyde Cottage and you will see. You are not in the home of a hoarder. You're in the home of a bookworm, very much so. But floors are wide open. Pathways are wide open. The books aren't where they shouldn't be. But even so, I wish I had the hindsight to know which books I should keep and which ones I shouldn't. That Nagy book on Greek heroes I should have kept. This book I should have kept. Ugly U.S. cover notwithstanding, I should have kept it. I've never seen it out in the wild as hardcover in order to rectify that error. And I don't even know it has a paperback. I would imagine that it did. It was a fairly good publisher, and it was widely praised. Good Lord. And if it has a paperback, I might be blurbed in really good company with other people. I might be. I know that Christian Wyman loved this book. What if I were blurbed by name on the paperback of this? How wonderful that would be. I'll find it someday, but I strongly recommend it, whether I am blurbed on it or not, amazingly. I strongly recommend it. This is a life worth learning about. Then we have the great Helen Vendler. This is The Ocean, the Bird, and the Scholar. This is a collection of occasional pieces that she did for like the New York Review of Books or wherever on poetry criticism, the best poetry critic since Randall Jarrow. This is all different kinds of figures. This is essays that are thematic, that are not criticisms or evaluations of individual poets. Just an amazing collection of work. Helen Vendler is always worth reading, and this is no exception. So my only caveat here would be that I think you would have to at least love the poetry of the poets that she talks about, if not know it. You're not going to know that poetry as well as she does. Nobody is. But you should at least love it. You should at least recognize that it is an incredibly serious and worthy study subject in order to get the most out of these essays. I don't think you will if you don't. If you don't read poetry, I don't know why you would read Helen Vendler. And then we can finish up with Star Trek. This is Book Trek, after all, Book Trek 2025. This is Michael Jan Friedman, who doesn't always do a lot for me with Star Trek, with his Star Trek fiction. But this novel did, for obvious nostalgic reasons. This is Crossover. It's a Star Trek Next Generation novel called Crossover, in which it takes place during the time of Jean-Luc Picard and the Enterprise D. Ambassador Spock is on Romulus. As we saw in the Next Generation two-parter reunification, he has decided to stay on Romulus and work to reunify the Romulan people with the Vulcan people. We don't know how long Spock does that job. He doesn't appear to still have it in the much later future of the Kelvin timeline, but we don't know if that's true in the Roddenberry timeline. But a group of Romulan insurgents has captured a group of Vulcans, Spock among them. And at the moment when they do that, they don't know who they have. They don't know that they have the legendary Captain Spock. Otherwise, the hostage negotiations would look very different. They don't know that they have him. And the Federation wants to get him before they learn who they have. And Picard and the Enterprise are sent to effect that. But there's a slight wrinkle. Two slight wrinkles, but one from Picard's point of view, is that sent along is Bones McCoy at 141 years old. And he outranks Picard. He outranks God. So he can be a lot of trouble for Picard if Picard doesn't do what he wants. But in addition to that wrinkle, Scotty, who, keep in mind, has, through a transporter bit of wizardry on his own part, has managed to come forward in time 70 years and is a man in late middle age. He's not like McCoy. He didn't live through that time. He's a man in late middle age, and he is in Picard's era. He learns of this story that Spock has been taken prisoner, and he decides to hijack a Constitution-class starship, hence the cover, from a museum. He uses his technical wizardry to hijack this starship to ride to Spock's rescue. So you've got McCoy and browbeating Picard on one end, and you've got Scotty on the other end, all converging on Spock's emergency. And it's wonderful. It's a great plot, and it's wonderfully done. Just wonderfully done. And I remember when I read this the first time, there's a scene when Picard and his crew are privately watching Spock and Scotty and McCoy talking, and they wonder if they're ever going to have that kind of bond. And at the first time that I read this book, I hated The Next Generation, and I said, not likely. It's just a workplace for all of you. But the more I've loved the Next Generation, the more I've seen that they did already have that kind of bond. And we saw that brightly and clearly, gloriously, in Star Trek Picard Season 3. The ultimate gift to Star Trek fans. So that is where we will end our Hedgehog book recommendations with a great old Star Trek novel. And I will be back with more Hedgehog book recommendations. Don't you worry. I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.